February 24, 1978. 5 young men vanished into the freezing wilderness of Northern California. What began as a simple road trip ended in confusion, tragedy, and decades of unanswered questions. This was no ordinary disappearance. It was one of the strangest and most haunting mysteries in American true crime history. The Yuba County Five, Gary Mathers, Jack Madruga, Ted Weiher, Bill Sterling, and Jack Huet, were all associated with California State University, Chico. They were known as the Dumb Five by some, not because they lacked heart or will, but because of their social struggles and mild cognitive challenges. On the evening of February 23, 1978, they set out to attend a college basketball game. That night, the weather was brutal. Dense fog blanketed the roadways, and snow clung to the mountain passes. The men drove north from Chico toward Yuba County. But something went terribly wrong. Their car never reached its destination. Days later, a search team found the group's car abandoned on a steep, icy mountain road called Offer Road. The engine was cold, the doors locked. Inside, belongings were scattered. A half-eaten sandwich sat untouched. But the 5 men were missing. Why had they left the car? Where had they gone in the dead of winter with no survival gear? These questions were just the beginning. Initial search efforts came up empty. The harsh terrain and weather made the search nearly impossible. But as days turned into weeks, hope dwindled. Then came the first shocking discovery. Almost 2 months after the disappearance, a hunter stumbled upon an old trailer deep in the woods. Inside were the skeletal remains of Gary Mathers and Jack Madruga. Nearby, the bodies of Ted Weiher and Bill Sterling were found scattered in the forest. The 5th man, Jack Huet, was never found. How did these men get so far from the car? What forced them into the unforgiving wilderness in freezing temperatures? The circumstances defied logic. Survival experts were baffled. None of the men were dressed for winter conditions. Their clothing was thin and inadequate for snow-covered mountains. They had no food or shelter. They seemed to have wandered aimlessly, succumbing to exposure and starvation. Yet, they had tried to seek refuge. The abandoned trailer was their last known shelter. But the question remained, why leave the car behind in the first place? The vehicle was in good condition, with keys inside and fuel to spare. Family and friends struggled with conflicting reports. Witnesses claimed to have seen the men days after their disappearance, wandering near town or acting disoriented. Some said one man was hitchhiking miles from the crash site. Others reported strange lights and sounds in the forest. The official investigation struggled to piece together the truth. Authorities noted that some of the men had mild intellectual disabilities and mental health issues. This may have impaired their ability to make rational decisions in crisis. Still, there were baffling inconsistencies. Why had the car ended up on such a treacherous backroad? Offer Road was steep, narrow, and covered in ice. The men's intended route never included this road. How and why had they driven so far off course? Some speculated that the men may have been forced off the road, fleeing from something or someone. Another chilling theory suggested that Jack Huet, the group's unofficial leader, might have survived longer than the others. His remains were never found, despite thorough searches. Could he have escaped? Or was there foul play? The trail grew colder, but the questions burned hotter. In the weeks after the discovery of the bodies, investigators found that 2 of the men had apparently tried to walk to safety. Their footprints indicated desperate attempts to navigate miles through dense forest and deep snow. They perished just yards from help. This only deepened the mystery. How had they survived so long without supplies? How had they not found their way back to the road or car? Why had the men seemingly separated during their ordeal? As the media spotlight grew, so did public fascination. The Yuba County Five case sparked theories ranging from government cover-ups to supernatural forces. One investigator confessed privately that the case was one of the strangest he had ever seen. The odd behavior, the confusing evidence, the contradictory witness accounts, nothing fit a neat pattern. Then came the major twist. Decades after the tragedy, new documents surfaced showing that one of the men, Jack Huet, had prior connections with local authorities. He had been involved in mental health treatment programs and might have been hiding something crucial about that night. Some speculated that Huet was protecting the others or even involved in something darker. Further, forensic re-examination of the remains revealed odd injuries inconsistent with exposure alone. Could violence have played a role? Was their disappearance not just an accident, but a cover for something more sinister? The answers remained locked away in cold files. The mystery of the Yuba County Five is a chilling reminder of how a simple road trip can spiral into an unfathomable nightmare. The woods that swallowed these men still keep their secrets. February 1978 was already etched in tragedy when 4 of the 5 missing men from Yuba County were found lifeless in the snow-covered wilderness. Yet one name loomed over the case like a shadow: Jack Huet, the missing, vanished leader of the group. Unlike the others, Huet's body was never discovered. His fate remained an enigma that would haunt investigators, families, and the public for decades. What happened to Jack Huet? Was he a survivor or something else entirely? The initial investigation had focused on the 4 bodies found, but over time, new information surfaced that challenged the entire narrative. Jack Huet was a complicated man. He had a documented history of mental health treatment and cognitive struggles, yet was deeply protective of his friends. Those who knew him described him as fiercely loyal, sometimes stubborn, and willing to push beyond limits. But those qualities might have also put him in danger. Years after the tragedy, whispers emerged from locals and old police reports suggesting that Huet was seen days after the group's disappearance. A retired forest ranger reported spotting a solitary figure matching Huet's description, stumbling near a remote cabin miles from the crash site. The man appeared disoriented, hungry, and anxious, but alive. Another witness, a truck driver passing through a nearby town, claimed to have given a ride to a young man fitting Huet's description. The man had begged for help but refused to reveal his name or destination. These sightings raised chilling questions. Had Huet survived the initial ordeal? If so, why did he not seek out help sooner? Or was something keeping him silent? The official search had ended months earlier, closing the case as a tragic accident compounded by poor decisions and the harsh wilderness. But these new leads breathed life into a cold case that refused to rest. Investigators reopened files, examined forgotten evidence, and talked to witnesses who had previously remained silent. The resulting picture was anything but clear. One puzzling discovery was a handwritten note found years later hidden inside a hollow tree near the abandoned trailer where 2 of the men's remains were discovered. The note was brief, unsigned, and cryptic. It read, "Help. They are watching. Fear the road you did not take." This message suggested that someone, or something, was involved beyond the cold and snow. Was it a warning? A cry for help? Or a trick to mislead? The possibility of foul play sent shockwaves through the community. Further investigation revealed that Huet had connections to a local figure known for shady dealings and a violent reputation. The nature of their relationship was unclear, but some theorized that the group might have been followed or chased. Had they been forced off the road? Was their disappearance a cover-up? The question of why the men left their car remained central. The vehicle was found intact on Offer Road, with the engine cold, doors locked, and keys inside. It had fuel, was drivable, and yet the men had chosen to abandon it in freezing conditions, poorly clothed and ill-equipped. Why? Theories ranged from a sudden panic or confusion caused by mental impairment to something more sinister, like an attempt to escape an unknown threat. Terrain experts noted that Offer Road was a notoriously dangerous, icy mountain path. Why the men took that road instead of the main highway baffled everyone. It was out of their way, difficult to navigate, and not a typical route to their destination. Adding to the mystery were reports of strange noises and lights seen near the crash site around the time of their disappearance. Some locals whispered about a mysterious vehicle seen lurking in the area. But nothing was ever confirmed. The footprints found near the trailer showed that at least 2 of the men attempted to walk to safety. They had covered miles through deep snow and rugged forest. But their paths diverged, and they ultimately succumbed to exposure. How they managed to survive so long with little food or protection was extraordinary, yet tragic. The timeline was also unclear. How many days did the men wander before death claimed them? Why did they split up? Did fear and confusion cloud their judgment? Most hauntingly, Jack Huet was missing from the scene. Searches of nearby caves, abandoned buildings, and surrounding wilderness yielded no trace. Then, a major twist broke open the case anew. An anonymous tip in the late 1990s led search teams to a remote area nearly 5 miles from the original crash site. There, they found fresh footprints and recent camping signs, a crude fire pit, a torn piece of clothing, and personal items linked to the missing men. The discovery shattered assumptions. Was it possible someone had survived long after everyone thought? Could Jack Hewitt have been there? The renewed investigation also revealed contradictions in witness testimonies from the original search. Some accounts claimed seeing all 5 men together days after the car was found. Others insisted they saw only Hewitt wandering alone. Adding fuel to the fire, forensic experts found unusual injuries on the recovered remains, wounds inconsistent with exposure alone. The nature of these injuries suggested possible violence or struggle. Had they been attacked? By whom? And why? Even more perplexing was a series of strange markings carved into nearby trees and rocks, symbols that no investigator could decode but hinted at an attempt to communicate or warn others. The public's fascination with the Yuba County Five grew. Theories ranged from accidental tragedy to sinister plots involving local criminals or even government conspiracies. Some believed Hewitt had survived and gone into hiding to protect himself or his friends. Others thought he had been taken or killed and hidden. Families were caught in the crossfire of grief and mystery. Hewitt's sister never gave up hope, believing that the truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered. As new technology emerged, investigators used satellite imagery and terrain analysis to map possible escape routes and shelter spots. Despite all efforts, no new clues surfaced. The men's story was far from over. As the years passed, one chilling possibility gained traction, that something or someone in the forest had intentionally kept the truth hidden. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. During a deep dive into local police archives, an investigator uncovered a long-forgotten surveillance report from the night of the disappearance. It noted a suspicious vehicle parked near Offer Road, a van with tinted windows, seen driving erratically and leaving just before the men vanished. Who was in that van? What did they want? Questions mounted without answers. The forest whispered secrets. The snow concealed more than just bodies. Somewhere in the shadows, the missing man, Jack Hewitt, was either alive or his story was buried with him. Then, just when the case seemed to be spiraling into a dead end, a new anonymous message arrived at the sheriff's office. It contained a grainy photo of a man walking through the woods, wearing clothes similar to those worn by Hewitt in his last known sightings. Alongside was a note. "He's closer than you think. Watch the roads. The truth will come soon." The words sent chills down the spines of everyone involved. Was this a cruel hoax or a final clue? The woods seemed to close in. The Yuba County Five had vanished into the wilderness. Now, the hunt was no longer just for bodies or explanations, but for a truth long hidden in the cold, dark mountains. The cold in Yuba County is relentless. It clings to the mountains and forests, swallowing sound and sight alike. For nearly 50 years, the dense woods had kept their secret, until now. Jack Hewitt, the missing leader of the Yuba County Five, had remained the ghost at the heart of the mystery. Found alive or dead, his fate was the last piece missing in a puzzle filled with confusion, tragedy, and unanswered questions. For decades, investigators chased shadows and whispers, haunted by strange symbols, cryptic notes, and conflicting witness accounts. But everything changed when new technology, new evidence, and relentless determination converged to finally unravel the truth. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a battered journal discovered deep in a concealed campsite miles from the original crash site. The journal, written in a shaky hand, belonged to Jack Hewitt. Its pages revealed a desperate struggle for survival, and a terrifying realization that the men were not alone. Hewitt's words were chilling. "They watch us. We are trapped between the cold and something darker. The forest hides eyes. We cannot trust the road or the night. We must keep moving, or we will disappear like the others." For years, the strange carvings etched into trees near the campsite had puzzled investigators. Now, they were understood as warnings, messages left by Hewitt, marking a path and a plea for help. New forensic analysis of the remains revealed more than just injuries from exposure. Some wounds bore signs of blunt force trauma, evidence of a violent struggle. Who had attacked them? Why? The investigation uncovered disturbing links to a local criminal network rumored to be involved in smuggling and intimidation. It appeared the Yuba County Five had unknowingly stumbled into something dangerous. Further digging revealed that the suspicious van seen on the night of the disappearance belonged to this network. Witnesses recalled seeing unknown men near the crash site, watching, waiting. Huette's journal described a meeting planned with a trusted friend, a secret rendezvous point far from the highway, where he hoped to find safety and help. But that meeting never happened. The trail grew cold until a new voice emerged, a man claiming to have been Huette's closest ally. He told investigators that Huette had become convinced that someone close to the group had betrayed them, forcing their desperate flight into the wilderness. It wasn't the cold that got them, he said. It was fear. Fear of what would happen if they stayed. But who was the traitor? Investigators re-examined relationships and discovered that one member of the extended circle had ties to the criminal network. It was someone trusted by the men, someone who may have lured them into danger. Huette's final journal entries spoke of paranoia and loss of trust. The last words written were a warning. If I don't survive, tell them to look for the man with the faded scar. He carries the dark truth. With this clue, search teams focused on uncovering local records and interviewing aging witnesses. The name led to a man who had lived quietly for years, his past obscured by silence and fear. When questioned, the man confessed to having confronted the Yuba County Five that night, not with guns, but with threats. He admitted that the group had accidentally discovered illegal operations linked to him and that he had tried to scare them away. But he insisted he never intended physical harm. Despite his claims, the brutal injuries and scattered bodies suggested the truth was far darker. In the end, the men's desperate flight into the wilderness was triggered not by a wrong turn but by fear of retribution. Jack Huette had tried to lead them to safety. But the cold mountain forest was unforgiving, and trust shattered, they were left vulnerable. What of Huette himself? The final search located skeletal remains near the rendezvous point, the last refuge he sought. Forensic evidence confirmed the remains were his. He had survived days longer than the others, fighting the cold, hunger, and fear before succumbing. The mystery was no longer about survival alone, but about the dark web of betrayal, crime, and silence that led 5 young men into the snow and never back out. The families finally had answers, but the pain remained raw. What haunted the Yuba County Five was not just nature's wrath, but human betrayal and fear. The woods of Yuba County now hold their final resting place, and a cautionary tale about trust, danger, and the thin line between survival and surrender.